Yeah.
And there's no space. So the person from your office, thank you. There's no space. Nobody wants to see the overflow. It's going.
Yeah.
There's another room that has
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please be seated?
In the meantime, you'll sit here when...
Attention, please. Can you all be seated?
No, you can't do it.
We are about to start.
They will never appear on
The minister must be here.
Oh,
Ladies and gentlemen, for the sake of time, can you all be seated so that we can start with our program?
What's the problem?
Doesn't want to switch off. Do you know how to switch this thing off?
No, with the sound people.
Okay.
So can I start with that? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ricardo Matlakanya. I'm facilitating this particular program. And then once more, welcome to our media briefing. I'll just take you through the agenda for the day. We'll start with the opening and welcome. And from thereof, we'll have an overview by Minister. And then we'll have another item by the acting CEO, just the introduction of the report. And then from thereof, we'll have a presentation by the Health Ombudsman. And then after that, we'll allow everyone to ask questions. And then from thereof, we'll hand over the report by the chairperson of OHSC. And then I would like to emphasize that there are rules, housekeeping rules, that we need to follow during this. And then first rule, I'll ask everyone to switch off their mobile phones or put them on a silent mode. And after that, the second rule will be that when we are asking questions, especially members of the media, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and also the company that you are representing. And then this particular session is a media briefing. It's open for the members of the media to ask questions. But other stakeholders will be a forum where they can also ask questions, but not in this particular briefing, because it's basically purely a media briefing, and we should treat it as such. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to the acting CEO of OHSC, Mr. Bafana Msibi, just to open, officially this particular session.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can they hear me? Thank you very much, Program Chair, and good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome everybody in today's briefing. I have called the briefing today on behalf of the Office of Standard Compliance to brief the media on the report into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of mentally ill patients in Gauteng province. So before I would continue the problem, I would like to hand over to the Minister of Health in the Republic of South Africa, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, to give us an overview.
Thank you very much, Bafana. Let me acknowledge the presence within our midst of the Honorable Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Pasha, as well as the Director General of the Department of Health, Me Precious Matsuso. We also have a member of the Portfolio Committee on Health from Cape Town, Re Fish Mashalela. And to my left here is Professor Mazwai, who is the chairperson of the board of the Office of Health Standard Compliance. We also have the Premier of Gauteng, Mr. David Makura. I'm sure you're going to hear from him later on. He's not going to be participating much, in this session. To my right, you have got the man of the moment, who we are all coming to listen to. We don't know what he has got in store for us. The Health Ombudsman, Professor Malrapuru Makhoba. Let me also welcome the families, the bereaved families, the aggrieved families here, who I believe are amongst our midst with their organizations. We hope that today here, after the Ombudsman will have given us a report, we will be in a position to find our way out. Ladies and gentlemen, then lastly, let me welcome members of the media. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2010, the National Department of Health contracted 5 organizations led by the Health System Trust to conduct an audit of health standards in all our health facilities. This included, among others, the core standards of cleanliness, safety of staff and patients, infection control, waiting times, attitude of staff to patients, and drug stockouts. It was after this audit that the decision was taken to establish a permanent structure that will inspect our facilities to ensure that they remain within acceptable standard. Hence, the Office of Health Standard Compliance was born. This is the office that called us to come here today with the CEO as Mr. Msibi and Professor Mazwai as the chairperson of the board. The Office of Health Standard Compliance was established in terms of Section 77 of the National Health Act, Act number 61 of 2003, as amended by the National Health Amendment Act, Act number 12 of 2013. As a juristic person, is also listed as a Schedule 3 Part A public entity in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, Act number 1 of 1999. When patients and members of the public felt that they have not been treated well or were treated with negligence by a health professional, they will usually lodge a complaint with statutory professional bodies like the Health Professions Council of South Africa, HPCSA, the South African Nursing Council, SANC, the South African Pharmacy Council, SAPC, and the Allied Health Professions Council of South Africa. However, when patients are wronged by an institution or the system as a whole, it is difficult for them to know who to turn to for relief. In the past, they will usually approach the media. We then realized that there is a gap in the accountability mechanism within the health sector. A decision was taken to have a health ombudsman within the Office of Health Standard Compliance. The Act states that the minister must, after consultation with the board, appoint a suitable qualified person and experienced South African citizen as the ombudsman. That is how South Africa's first ever health ombudsman came into being, ladies and gentlemen. Section 81A of the Act defines the functions of the health ombudsman as follows. Number one, the ombudsman may, on receipt of a written or verbal complaint relating to the norms and standards, or in his or her own initiative, consider, investigate, and dispose of the complaint in a fair, economical, and expeditious manner. Two, after each investigation, the ombudsman must submit a report together with his or her recommendations on appropriate action to the Chief Executive Officer of the Office of Health Standard Compliance. Three, where the Chief Executive Officer fails to act in accordance with the findings and recommendations of the ombudsman may request the intervention of the minister. Four, the ombudsman must within 1 month after the end of the financial year prepare a report on the affairs and functions of the ombudsman during the financial year in question and submit such a report to the minister for tabling in Parliament. On the 13th of September 2016, the MEC for Health in Gauteng, Mr. Tane Mahlangu, announced in the Gauteng legislature that 36 mentally ill patients referred from Life Esidimeni Psychiatric Hospital have died. As Minister of Health, I immediately requested the Health Ombudsman, Professor Malagapuru Makgoba, to investigate the circumstances surrounding the death of mentally ill patients in the Gauteng province. That report is now ready and has been handed to the CEO of the Office of Health Standard Compliance. According to the Act, presently Mr. Msevi is the acting CEO of the office. I am now handing over to him to conduct the proceedings. Mr. Msevi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I would like to confirm that we have received the report from the Health Ombudsman, Professor Makgoba, on the 30th. It was officially handed over to me as the acting CEO of the office. And I have considered the report, and I am in agreement with the report. I'm in concurring with the report. But Professor Makgoba has been doing the investigation. On behalf of the office, I would request Professor Makgoba to present the report himself to you. I will now hand over to Professor Makgoba to present.
I think he must come here. Is it here? Or must yeah, he must come here. We'll use this. You need to swap it first.
Okay. Is it picking up?
No, you must speak into this, into the mic. These ones are for the media.
Oh, okay. Honorable Minister, Deputy Ministers, the Premier of Gauteng, the DG of the National Department of Health, the expert panel that did the investigation here, the family members that are here and took troubles to be with us, and their representative organizations, members of the media that have been harassing us for a little while, and maybe today they will stop after this. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, it is indeed my honor and privilege to be able to present my first report, and I'm doing this under the auspices of the OHSC. By the act that appointed me, I'm supposed to prepare a report and hand it over to the CEO of the OHSC. and for him to action the report. It is part of that action that he has requested me today to be able just to share with all of you my experiences and some of the things that I found during the investigation. So this is no longer my report. I'm just the spokesperson on behalf of the OHSC as it has already been articulated. Let me start, first of all, by a very simple quotation from William Osler, a famous English physician, who said, "Listen to your patient. He or she is telling you the diagnosis." During this investigation, I have listened to over 73 witnesses. Listened. And I want to believe that they have told me the diagnosis of what the problem is, and that's what I'll be presenting. The second quotation from William Osler said, "There are only two sorts of doctors, those who practice with their brains and those who practice with their tongues." Now, you know that those who practice with their tongues are called spin doctors, and some of you fall into that category, and those that practice with brains are often called physicians, and that's what some of us are. I want to preface this because I think you will read this, during what I'm going to say from now on. I was appointed, by the minister in a letter dated the 26th of September with the mandate to investigate the circumstances surrounding the death of mentally ill patients in Gauteng province and advise on the way forward. That was the mandate that I was given. And of course, to investigate the death of 36 patients is quite a task and quite complex. And remember that I'm not a psychiatrist, so I last did psychiatry in 1975, but I was tasked this as the Health Ombudsman to be able to do that. The first thing I did in this process was to appoint an expert panel of psychiatrists and a public health expert. They are all here. There were 7 psychiatrists and there was 1 public health expert. I think they are sitting here amongst you. To go through the clinical records of the patients, the 36 patients that the MEC provided us, analyze those in the best practice of their own specialities, and come up with a report. So all they did was to look at the clinical records of the 36 patients that were provided to us and analyze the details of that with the knowledge and the expertise that they have and provide us with a report. Their full report will be available on the website because it's a complete report on its own of their analysis of what took place in this matter. I then had a second set of analysis from the inspectors here in the Office of Health Standards to go around the 27 NGOs that the MEC had given us to examine them and look at their compliance in relation to caring for the patients that were transferred to them from Life Esidimeni, and also to produce a report. These two groups did not speak to each other. They were completely independent, and they were working on separate terms of reference. And then I had decided that I would like to meet people, witnesses, under almost cross-examination, spending 1 hour with each of the witnesses, listening but also cross-examining them. As I say, I've had about 73 of those. Some of them, the interrogations took about 2 hours, others 1 hour. So I must have spent close to 80 hours just listening to people and interrogate them. And then after that, I collated the information from the expert panel, from the inspectors, from my interrogations to bring the report that I am bringing here. Now, before I go there, when this issue occurred in the media, the minister immediately dispatched his ministerial advisory committee because of the circumstances of the nature, to go around quickly to the NGOs and to try and see what interventions could be done urgently, I think, to prevent further losses of life. This Ministerial Advisory Committee is chaired by Professor Solomon Rataimane. I've seen him here. He's amongst us. They went around and they closed one of the NGOs, Precious Angels, where at the time, 18 out of 47 patients had already died in that NGO. So it was immediately closed, and they recommended for us to watch other NGOs, of which I can speak about later on. But the exercise was to intervene, have a stopgap whilst we were doing the investigation. And only later on did they provide us with their report of what they found. So when we were doing our investigations, we did not have the report of the Ministerial Advisory Committee. But what they managed to achieve was obviously to stop further losses of life that we replicated throughout the system whenever we encountered NGOs that requires to be closed immediately, and we made the recommendations. So with this background, I now want to go on to the key findings. Some of you might have read some of these things in our popular media that depends on gossips, but now I'm going to give you my final report. Here are the key findings. A total of 94 and not 36 mentally ill patients have died during this process. 94, not 60, not 80, not 87, whatever you read in the Sowetan was wrong. It's 94, and this, I call it a provisional number. The reason why I call it a provisional number is because there are other agencies that are investigating this process, like the South African Police. They are still investigating. There are corpses that are still in mortuaries that have not been identified, and we don't know whether they form part of this. Not all the information we could get from the NGO was often full. Some of them were actually reluctant to give information. And some families are now just coming out of the woodworks, sending us names of their relatives that they want us to investigate. So I suspect that the number, it's higher than that, and that's why I have entitled my report 94 silent death and still counting, because the counting will obviously outlive my report. And I want to emphasize this is a provisional number that keeps on changing as more people are obviously counted. The second major finding is that all the 27 NGOs where patients were transferred from Life Esidimeni have been found to have been operating under invalid licenses. In short, I'm saying that the Gauteng Department of Health took mentally ill patients from a licensed institution and put them into 27 unlicensed or NGOs that operated with invalid licenses. And you can see how unlawful that must be for a provincial department to do that to a group of vulnerable people about whom we must actually take the utmost care and look after. So 27 of those NGOs were unlawful, and therefore anybody who died in those circumstances died under unlawful circumstances. It's that simple. Now, the next finding is that 80% of the deaths occurred in 5 complexes. 5. Now, if you wanted to say that people died because it was winter, I kept on asking people, did this winter just only visit 5 places in Gauteng? And nobody could answer that. And those places are CCR, the Cullinan Center, Rehabilitation Center, together with these NGOs called Siabadinga and eNCA, where 25 of the mentally ill patients died. There was Musiho, and that works with Takalani, where 15 people died. There was Tsipong, where 10 people died. And then there was a place called Hefsiba, where 5 people died. So, and there was Precious Angels, where I think 20 mentally ill patients died. So 80% of the death occurred in these 5 places. And remember, there are 27 NGOs. So let's not leave here with the message that every NGO is painted with the same brush. It's only painted in the same brush that they are all unlicensed. But in terms of death, 11 of them, there were no deaths. And I think we must just recognize that. Now, here is a point that I want to clarify again for the sake of people. When a patient enters the health system, you enter it through a doctor or through a clinic or through a district clinic or through a hospital. The place where you register becomes your permanent home as you move through the system. You don't change your home as you move unless you are deregistered. Why is this important? When it was decided that patients were going to be moved from Life Esidimeni, there were 3 options that could be taken. Patients could be either sent back to their homes, or they could be sent to hospitals, or they could be sent to NGOs. So in the end, some patients were sent home. But 360 patients, the very sick patients, were sent to hospital. That became their home. About 1,039 patients were sent to these 27 NGOs. That became their home. That suddenly, when you are in that NGO, you may be rushed to hospital. It doesn't transfer your identity and where you belong. You belong to the home where you were originally registered as, which would be either the NGO or the hospital. Why is this important? The very sick patients were transferred to hospitals, and these were 360, very sick. And out of those 360, only 4 died in the hospital. Then 77 patients died in the NGOs out of the 1,039. In simple statistics, what it meant is that for every patient who died in the hospital, 7 patients died in the NGO. So there were 7 times more patients that were dying in the NGO as opposed to the hospital. And remember that these are the very sick people went to hospital, and the less sick people actually went to the NGOs. So pointing out that there was a problem with the NGOs. I've already told you that they were operating with invalid license, but I haven't gone really to the details of that. Now, clearly, what was the then third finding? The third finding I made was that the expert panel and the Ombud found that a high-level decision to terminate the contract was taken precipitously. And this was followed by a program of action with disastrous outcome or consequences, including the deaths that I've mentioned. I then identified 3 key players in this. It was the MEC, it was the head of the department, Mr. Dr. Silvano, and it was the director. In Shakespearean English, I call them the dramatis personae. These are the key players or the key role players that participated in decision-making, in implementation, and in overseeing the project. And I've said in my report, their fingerprints are peppered throughout the report as to what actions were happening. The program of action that they undertook was described by almost every stakeholder as chaotic, shambles, rushed, and in a hurry. And I'm talking about almost 73 voices that came to give evidence that the action that followed for this project to occur was chaotic, it was hurried, it was in a rush, it was shambolic. The fourth finding I've made is that there is prima facie evidence that several human rights violations took place, and I have listed those in my findings in details. I have also listed a series of close to 15 actions and decisions that I've classified as negligent, reckless decisions and actions that were taken by either the MEC or the head of department, or jointly, or by the Gauteng department. I've listed those. I then have made recommendations. I've made about 18 recommendations, but I just want to touch on a few, and then I'll obviously conclude. I have recommended that this project, called the Gauteng Marathon Project, and most probably other similar projects in our country, must be de-established or cease to occur. I have also made a recommendation that I've heard been discussed, that perhaps the Premier of the Gauteng province must, in the light of these very serious findings, consider the suitability of the MEC for Health, MEC Mahlangu, to continue in her current role as MEC. I have also recommended that disciplinary action be taken against the HOD and the director, and this must also be reported to their respective health professional council. I've also found that one of the things I found was the pervasive fear that took place, I think, as we were interviewing, particularly the staff of the Gauteng Department of Health. I interviewed 25 of these. All of them were gripped in fear. All of them were, although they knew that this project was wrong and the direction was wrong, they could not actually say it to their principals. And in fact, in the word of a poem by Lord Alfred Tennyson, they said, ours was not to reason why, but ours was to do and die. They were just doing what they were being instructed to do. And this is what I found taking place here. So there are other recommendations, and one of the ones that I have asked was that because of the loss of credibility in the MEC that I have picked up during the investigation, I have recommended that maybe the MEC, the Premier and the National Minister must take over this project to engage with the families and see a way forward that is away from really bringing the confrontation that has taken place already. I want to conclude as follows. Oh, there are five, okay, there are, as I said, there are five, there are 5 deputy directors and chief director and the director. I've already spoken about the director. I've already spoken about her. The director and the HOD, I've spoken about that. They must face disciplinary action and possibly be suspended because they were trying to interfere actually with the investigations, and the evidence is there in the report. But that's what I recommend. And then there are several, I think, deputy directors that I've listed in my findings, and the chief director and the chairperson of the Mental Health Review Board. I feel that they must also undergo, I think, disciplinary action because they knew that the project was wrong. They really did not exercise their fiduciary responsibility that compromised governance in some of these NGOs, particularly at Siabadinga, eNCA, and the CCRC, where a large number of, I think, mentally ill patients died. I also support the view that has come through, I think Section 27, that an inquest and the SAPS must accelerate their investigations and their findings must be shared as far as possible with other law enforcement agencies so that appropriate action can be taken. I wanted to just conclude by 4 anecdotes. Yeah, what is this? Yeah, okay. Okay. The minister is just reminding me, I've just, as I say, the recommendations are quite long, but I've recommended that all NGOs that must be reviewed and I think particularly in terms of their license, but NGOs where all these deceased have occurred must also face the music in terms of the law. And that is obviously something that has to be decided upon. But the rest of this report is, as I speak right now, on the website. So anybody can pick up the report and find it out. The report of the panel of experts will also be on the website at a later stage. The report of the inspectors will also be on the website. So this office shall have no secrets about what it has done, because we serve in the interest of the public. But now let me end by just 4 anecdotes. On the 13th of September, when the MEC made her announcement that 36 patients had died, actually it was 77 patients had already died on the 13th of September. Now, why she did not know that information, I cannot answer, but they had already died because their death, the dates of death, it's recorded, and 77 patients had already died on the 13th. The last one was Sophia Molefe. Her mother is there, who died on the 12th. So that's a fact that I think the public needs to ask and say, why did she not know and why did she not have the information? Now, I moved from there. I interviewed the MEC on the 29th of November. And I asked her, MEC, how many patients have died? And she said 40. This is from the 13th of September to the 29th of November. She still had a number of 40. I then asked the head of department, how many patients have died around the 23rd of November? He said 37. I asked the director, how many patients have died? He said 48. Now, you have 3 of the most senior people in a department not knowing a simple number, how many patients have died in the service that they provide. And this is an issue that has engaged and occupied all of us. 10 weeks after that happened, they still did not know. So that's a very important issue. Now, again, I come back. I said, it seemed statistically and logically absurd that the cold winter of 2016 in Gauteng only chose to visit 5 places, and those 5 places I've already listed. Finally, just about 3 weeks ago, I received deaths in South Africa, we must be remarkable. You have 2 death dates, and you've got to go around trying to confirm that. You have 2 ID numbers, and you also have surnames that keep on changing with spellings and so forth. So the problem with data was a major one that I have had to deal with. Now, finally, so that I can hand over, I believe that a combination of negligence, reckless decisions and actions, combined with appalling conditions in some of the NGOs, as revealed through the evidence of the different stakeholders, through the expert panels, through the inspectors of the Office of Health Standards, and through the interviews that I've held, have revealed that there has been excess and unnecessary but preventable death for some of the diseases that have occurred. I don't believe that everybody could have lived during that time, but equally, there is strong evidence that some of these deaths could have been prevented. That's why they did not occur in every place. Maybe just to cite, Reverend Mabue is here also. I've seen him, I've interviewed him. He went to see his son called Billy at a place called Bopilong Sirman. When he arrived there, his son told him, "Daddy, I'm hungry." And Reverend Mabue went to buy some Nando's or KFC, I'm not sure which one he likes. And he says when he came there, his son ate the food so ravenously that he even wanted to eat the plastic. That's how hungry the child was. And he was wasted. So that's the dynamic of what happened in this incident. And I want to thank you again on behalf, I'm doing this on behalf of the OHSC. I will now hand over to Bafana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I have already indicated that the report was handed over to the Office of Health and Compliance on the 30th, and we are concurring with the report. I will hand over to our communication person who will take questions. But after we've taken the questions, Professor Mazwai will hand over the report officially the final report to the Premier of Gauteng and to the Minister of Health in the Republic. And we will then vacate from the OHSC. We are requesting the media to remain behind because the Premier would like to also brief the media after we've finished here. And we would also like to see families first when we are done here. But I'll now hand over to the...
Yeah, sorry, CEO, I just thought I need to mention something before the media personnel conducts the question session because it's very important. According to Section 88A of the Act, subsection 1, it provides that any person aggrieved by any decision of the office or any findings and recommendations of the Ombudsman in relation to the matter regulated by this Act, or a person acting on his or her behalf, may, within 30 days of him or her gaining knowledge of that decision, lodge a written appeal with the minister. I think it's important for people to know that these are provided for in the Act, so that when certain actions are taken, they must not be surprised. Subsection 2 of that same Act, that means subsection 2 of Section 88A, states that the minister must, upon receipt of the application written application's written appeal, as contemplated in subsection 1, number A, appoint an independent ad hoc tribunal in terms of subsection 3. Number B, submit the appeal to the tribunal for adjudication in the prescribed manner. And it goes on to say the tribunal contemplated in subsection 2 may do 2 things. A, it may confirm, set aside, or vary the decision of the Office of the Ombudsman. And 2, it must notify the parties in the decision. Subsection 3 states, a tribunal contemplated in section 2 must consist of not more than 3 persons, of whom, number A, 1 must be a person who is a retired judge of a high court or a retired magistrate who must chair the tribunal. And B, 2 must be persons appointed on account of their knowledge of the healthcare industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm mentioning this because it's not commonly known in the Act that it means the recommendations of the professor. Anybody who might feel that they don't like them will appeal to me, and I'm not the one who's going to take the final decision. It's a judge, a retired judge with 2 experts in health, and I will have to accept their recommendation. That will include, in my understanding, recommendation number 10, which says appropriate legal proceedings should be instituted or administrative action taken against the NGOs that were found to have been operationally unlawful and where the mental health patients died. So the legal actions mentioned here is not only for the staff of Gauteng, it's even for the NGOs themselves, because we believe they acted illegally. And all of them can appeal in terms of this section 88A. And that appeal must happen within 30 days of their knowing, within the 30 days of their coming to knowledge about the recommendations against them. I'm also mentioning it, ladies and gentlemen, because during question time, I might be required to answer questions. Now, the main person who will answer questions will be the professor. Some questions might be policy, might be related to a policy or to the overall health sector. And the professor may not be able to answer them, like this issue of data. Yeah. Yes, I've got an answer to that about what we're doing. But where I'm going to find it difficult, and I don't want the media to say I'm dodging, the recommendations that has been made here, because of this section 88 where people are going to appeal to me, it might be difficult for me to answer questions. Because when people appeal, they'll say, oh, but the minister has already made his feelings known. So the questions that I might find difficult to answer is, number 1, the recommendation that the Premier of Gauteng must look at the suitability of the MEC to continue in that position. That's given to the Premier. Number 2, that the HOD of Gauteng, Dr. Bani Sullivan, must be suspended immediately and be taken to DC and be reported to the Health Professions Council of South Africa, and the police investigation hand over to the NPA. These are 4 things. I may not be able to comment. Dr. Manamela, the director of mental health, the recommendations here that she must be suspended with immediate effect, that she must be taken to DC. She's a nurse by profession. She must be reported to the South African Nursing Council, and the investigation by police must be sent to the relevant authorities like the NPA. I may not be. The last group are the Deputy Directors General, who are also, as the report read, out of fear, did what they were not supposed to have done. All those are including the NGOs, all of whom were found to be working without licenses, who must be taken up legally. I am not going to be able to comment when you ask me, because they are within these 30 days of appeal. Only after the 30 days has expired, whether they've appealed or not, is then that the minister will be able to say something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you very much, everyone. Our panel have spoken. I'll now open the session and provide everyone with an opportunity to ask questions. Like I said before, just say your name and also the organization that you are representing. The floor is now officially opened. I'll take 3 set of questions. I've noted 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that 4? 4 and 5. In that sequence, please. You are first, ma'am. You are first, yes.
Hi, my name's Kyla Hermanson. I'm from eNCA's Checkpoints. Firstly, I'd just like to thank the professor for your very thorough work on this report. I just noticed in the recommendations that you do say that all the NGOs that remain should be placed under review and should be inspected, and you'll proceed from there. But I just wanted to know, what implications does that have for the remaining patients who are still living in those NGOs?
I'll take the second one in that sequence. You are the second one, yes.
Hi, my name is Namrata Ndebele from Spotlight. My question is for the Minister. Minister, do you anticipate an appeal from the MEC?
The third one? You are the third? Yes, you are the third.
Good day, I'm Suzanne Venter from Rapport. My question is also about the MEC. We started with stories in March last year after desperate parents contacted us. They sent us emails to me, hundreds of emails that was sent to the MEC. Then I made an appointment with her. I went to her office. I was sitting at the table with her, and I showed her the emails, and she said to me that she's attending to all of them. So now I just want to make it clear, in case she knew. I showed them to her, and she never attended to any problem. She never attended to any of the patients, family members' emails that were sent to her. She repeatedly told me, well, send it to me, and then I did, and she ignored it. She also said regarding the NGOs, because I repeatedly gathered that she's trying to shift the blame to the NGOs. And I confronted her with that, and she repeatedly said to me that the NGOs were all inspected and they were fine. So now I want to know why, now the NGOs are in the wrong. It's just, it's very weird. And the other thing that I want to know is who approved this whole thing, because according to information that I got, this whole plan is based on an overseas model where you move patients back into the community, but given that there are clinics where these patients can get proper medication, proper care, and proper rehabilitation and stimulation. So the decision was made to take this plan through, but the second part of the plan was never given any attention to. And when I asked the MEC, but what about the second plan, she just ignored me. So, that's just very weird. I mean, what's going to happen going forward? Are you going to give attention to that model?
Thank you. I'll take the fourth one. Let's try to be short, straight to the point when we ask questions for the sake of time.
My name is Lara Lopez Gonzalez, and I'm with Becky Sisa at the Mail and Guardian. Cullinan also had a lot of problems, and Cullinan is not an NGO, but is a Department of Health facility. Are patients still at Cullinan, and what is being done to remedy the problems at that facility?
Well, that's the fourth one, and then from there. Oh, no, the fifth one, sorry.
Minister, it's Masego Rahlaga from Eyewitness News. My question is pretty simple, and I know that you're not her direct boss, but as the health minister, are you in any way embarrassed by these findings and what's been happening with the move from Esidimeni for these patients? I mean, this is a lot, and the Health Ombudsman says it's 94 and still counting.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll hand over to our panel just to answer those questions.
Thank you. I think the first question deals with the patients that are in the NGOs. In my recommendations, I made it very clear, and I've heard this loud and clear during my interviews, that there are many patients that are still at risk in the NGOs. So I've requested that they are removed from those NGOs and they are placed in hospital environments where they can be looked after. So I've not simply said it must be de-established. The project must be established, but we must take care of the risk that still exists in some of the NGOs, even though they might not have had death in there, because we don't know when that is gonna happen. Now, the issue that Suzanne Fenter raises about the NGOs, their criteria, and that they have been inspected. The inspectors in the OHSC and many other people, including people in the National Department of Health, have asked for the criteria that was used by the Gauteng Directorate of Mental Health. We have never found that criteria. So we didn't have it, and I think that is also captured in the report. So the criteria either was opaque, it wasn't clear, and what is important is that even though they went around licensing places, sometimes they went to the NGOs and said, you know, I think you can open an NGO. Open and then we'll give you a license. So even before an inspection was done, a license was given. And sometimes they would go and say, oh, you've got 20 patients. No, make it 60, we will provide you with a license. And then the people would be attracted by the money, and then they would open for more people, and then the place would be overcrowded. So there are many of these kind of activities. Now, here is the strong evidence. When I asked the director, Dr. Manamela, who signed the license? She said she signed the license. Did you know that you were not supposed to sign the license? She knew that she was not supposed to sign the license because it's supposed to be signed by the head of the department. When I asked the head of the department, did you know that she's not supposed to sign the license? The answer was yes, I knew that, but we had never had time to correct it. So the inspectors, one of our inspectors went around to one of the NGOs. When they arrived there, they found an old, nice lady, and they asked this lady, can you show us your license? Because that's the first thing they wanted. This old lady says, no, I've got the old license. I'll show it to you, but I won't give it to you because the new license is now coming. And what happened was that after the evidence, they'd given the evidence, the HOD then went around and took all the licenses that were signed by Dr. Manamela and re-signed them as the new licenses without any inspection. That's why I want to put that on the table. In terms of CCRC, there has been problems of staffing there at the CCRC. There has been problems of governance there at CCRC. There has been problems of budgeting at CCRC, but it has also been complexified by the fact that they have had 3 different NGOs residing at CCRC that were not licensed. One was called Life Disabled, the next one was called Siabadinga, the third one was called eNCA, and it was poor with no resources, but hosting patients there from CCRC. So they have now got a new CEO who's trying to correct all these deficiencies that have taken place. So there is a process taking place at the CCRC. But yeah, those are the issues.
I think there are 2 questions for me. Whether I anticipate any appeal from the MEC, let me just say I've read the relevant sections of the Act, Section 88A, that any person who feel aggrieved by these findings must appeal within 30 days to the minister, and the minister must choose that tribunal led by a judge. That's all I can say. I don't want to anticipate who's going to appeal and who is not. It will be very wrong and dangerous to do so. The last question is whether I'm embarrassed as the minister. I'm not embarrassed. I'm distressed and very angry, actually. It's quite distressing. So it goes beyond embarrassment. It brings anger in you and the distress, because as the professor said, something like this should have been avoided. That's why, in this regard, I welcome recommendation number 14, which the prof did not read, but you are going to find it. it has always been a debate, this issue, when we were dealing with NHI, National Health Insurance. How do you deal with this issue of concurrence, where a province has got certain powers, the minister has certain powers? When you asked me about this embarrassment, you said, yes, you acknowledge that I'm not her immediate boss. Her boss is the Premier of Gauteng, but I'm the Minister of Health, all these health acts. Now, that concurrency is being debated because it's causing problems in the national health system. Now, the professor, and remember, these functions of mental health were residing in the national department. They were only transferred to provinces after the Mental Health Act of 2002. Is then that the power lied in provinces. Because the Life Esidimeni license was there for 40 years. After democracy, it was under the national department. But after the Mental Health Act of 2002, it was then referred to provinces. So I fully welcome recommendation number 14, which says there's an urgent need to review the National Health Act 2003 and the Mental Health Act 2002 to harmonize and bring alignment to different spheres of government. Centralization of certain functions and powers of the Mental Health Act must revert back to the national minister, while Schedule 4, Part A of the Constitution, and Section 3, Subsection 2, Subsection 21, Subsection 1, Subsection 25, Subsection 1 and 2, Subsection 48 and 49, and Section 90 of the National Health Act, number 61 of 2003, recognizes and defines health as a concurrent competence between the national and provincial government sphere. The findings and lessons of this investigation merits a review of all these things, acts and the concurrency. Furthermore, projects of high impact on the quality and reputation of the national health system and whose outcomes undermine human dignity, human well-being, and human life must not be permitted nor be undertaken without the express permission of the National Health Minister or his or her nominee. This is the finding that answers where in future the minister will come in, and this is something that we are going to look at very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I please also open up the floor again once more? I'll take another 5 set of questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In that sequence. Yeah, I've noted you. I'll start with the number 1. You're the first, yes. Yeah. Can you give her the mic?
Good morning. My name's Hajra Amaji from Power FM. Professor, are you comfortable that these NGOs are still operating and that there's over 1,200 patients in them? Or would you go as far as to suggest that these patients, even those that are not high risk, should perhaps be transferred back to Life Esidimeni? Secondly, you said that many of the people you interviewed within the Gauteng Department of Health were gripped by fear. Would you go as far as to recommend criminal action against Dr. Manamela, the HOD, or the MEC? And then, have you made any findings or recommendations, or do you have an opinion on compensation for the families of victims, or should this happen on an individual basis or through a court of law? And then, Minister, because surely the national ministry does have some level of culpability because it comes from the legislation in 2003 and 2004 that these patients should be transferred to NGOs, and I understand the implementation was terrible, but surely there is some level of accountability in terms of the legislation back then and what the provinces tried to do. And finally, as the Health Ombudsman recommended, the suitability of the MEC should be considered. surely you as minister have to have an opinion on this recommendation in particular. I'm not talking about Mahlangu, I'm talking about the principle that an ombudsman can say the suitability of an MEC, or the principle that an ombudsman could say the suitability or the fitness of a minister, or in fact the president, should be questioned. Because if this is accepted, then tomorrow another ombudsman could say President Jacob Zuma is not fit for office, and this will set a precedent.
I'll take number 2. Can we also please to be concise when we ask questions? Number 2.
Part of my name is Pat Sidley and I'm from the British Medical Journal. Part of my question was asked, and that had to do with the criminal ramifications. But what I would like to know is what possibilities there are for criminal cases, which laws in particular would incur criminal prosecutions.
Thank you. I'll go to number 3.
Good morning. Thank you, Professor Makgoba. My name is Mark Hayward. I'm from Section 27. So it's directed to Professor Makgoba. Professor Makgoba, you described the decision to close Life Esidimeni as precipitate. I think you used that word. And you also, in describing the behavior of Manamela, described what really is fraudulent behavior. My question is whether you recommend a broader criminal investigation into whether there were corrupt motives behind the closure of Life Esidimeni and the establishing of these NGOs for this purposes. And linked to that, whether your report says anything about the fact that twice the Gauteng Health Department was taken to court, or once to court, to try to stop the closure on behalf of the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. And the Gauteng Health Department went before court and told the court that they were satisfied with the conditions at Takalani in particular, where a number of people died. Do you consider that perjury, and do you consider perjury to be a criminal offense when it is conducted before the courts?
Sanbona. Yeah, mina into engifuna ukuya ngiyezwa iminister yakhuluma kodwa mina ngifuna ukwazi ukuthi kulaba abashonelwe imindeni yabo ithatha siphi isinqumo emndenini, ikhalisa ngani ngoba imindeni eminye ebingasebenzi mayingcwaba laba abantu. Ukubhlungu kithi enhlizweni zethu ngabafowethu nabodadewethu abasifelele ibhedlela ukube idimeni kudala ishintsha abantu. Mina ngicela ukwazi ukuthi kwenteka kanjani ukuthi lokho kwenteke ngoba iminister yehealth ikhona, umthetho ukhona ukuthi kuze kufe abantu abangaka abanye bangakatholakala kwentiwa yini lokho kuba kuthini ethi ngiyabonga.
Sorry, before you move on, can you also mention your name and the organization that you are representing? Oh, it's a family man. Okay.
Igama lami ngubonga noKasithola.
Okay, no thanks. All right. Oh, a family man. Okay, no, I'll take that.
Offenses Timo, SABC TV News. Minister, I'd like to know if maybe this could have been a corrupt money-making scheme, since some of the centers were actually registered before the patients were actually brought in, before the inspections were actually conducted. Thanks.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll open up for another session, but now let's first deal with those questions.
Okay. I think, is it Omarji? I think she asked too many questions in the same thing, and I don't have a long span of attention, so I forgot most of what she asked. Okay, I want to deal with the issue of criminal actions and compensation. First of all, I actually sat down and asked myself, if this investigation had been done by a priest, what would be his recommendation or her recommendation? I'm sure she would have found that many people have sinned and maybe we should pray for them. If this investigation had been done by a lawyer, maybe the word criminal would have come into the lexicon of the person. This was done by a medical scientist who understand the practice of medicine. And that's how I have used the language here. And the reason why I avoided words like criminal and so forth is because my recommendations were about processes going forward that are not going to be determined by me, but are going to be determined by other structures that are relevant to the people that I am charging here. I'm not going to be doing anything, but I should recommend a process of that facilitate that. You will notice that I've never mentioned the word NPA here because I will bring Sean Abrams very quickly into this room. Now, I didn't do that, but I have used the general context of saying that the relevant law agencies must be informed so that they can take appropriate action. Now, there are many of these kind of agencies without prescribing which ones must happen. So, Mark, I understand what you're saying, but I have not used that, and I'm sure other people may come to the same conclusions as you. The issue of compensation, and I want to do this in the following way. If you look at the act that appointed me, it says I must dispose of complaints fairly, without fear and prejudice, but also in the most economic way. I think you must read that very carefully. It means I must do things on the cheap generally. I shouldn't be asking for money. Now, my looking into this matter, when I was speaking to the relatives and to the families, there are obviously different expectations by different families. Some, obviously, they want closure to know what happened to their related ones. Others want to be compensated for funerals and others. Others obviously want to take what I would call formal legal actions and so forth. Now, in my recommendations, which I didn't make, which is recommendation number 17, I have said, in the light of the fact that the relatives and the families have lost confidence in the credibility of the MEC, the Premier of the province and the national minister must convene a meeting with the families to listen to them and hear what their suggestions should be. Secondly, to appoint perhaps an experienced South African who is experienced in what I call alternative dispute resolution, so that I think you can flush out, I think, the issue of how you move forward in terms of compensation. I've not said there shouldn't be compensation, but it may not be everybody who wants compensation in the same way. And I think that can only be flushed out through a process of someone who is experienced in dispute resolution. But what I was trying to avoid is that you then go and get the families together with the MEC and you have a band fight rather than have a mediated process. And I'm not sure what would come out of that, but I thought if you look at the trauma of the history of our country, you will be able to see that we should be able to overcome and discuss such people, not such issues. Not that everybody will agree, but at least let's try and have an understanding of what happened. And I thought that the minister, the national minister, together with the premier, meeting with the families or their representative and the various other structures that have been involved, can actually come up with that way forward of compensation and mechanisms of redress that I couldn't specify in these recommendations. Thank you.
Yes, I think the first question to me was from Omar G, again from Power FM. I think you completely misunderstood what I said. There's no act. There was no act passed in 2002, which ever said patients must be transferred to communities. Such an act does not exist. All I was saying is the Mental Health Act 2002 took responsibility and power of dealing with mental patients from the national department so that it started vesting in the provinces. And so the even at that time, it means then the contract that the government, the National Department of Health had with Life Esidimeni was then transferred to a province. It was not telling the province to send anybody to communities. So that's wrong. There's no such an act. The issue of communities maybe, which comes into the picture. We are working under the auspices of the Mental Health Global Action Plan of the World Health Organization, 2013-2020, and also the National Mental Health Policy Framework and Strategic Plan of South Africa, 2013-2020. Actually, I've got the documents here. This is ours, and this is of the World Organization. This document of the World Organization is based on a resolution of the 55th World Health Assembly, which was also held in 18 May 2002, about this issue of community care. Now, if you read them, both documents, they clearly outline what they mean by that and how it's going to be done. In other words, they are talking about the whole mental health having to integrate psychiatric hospital, community centers, integration into families, primary health care. The document even has drawn a pyramid of what must happen at that level. Now, they outline step by step what should happen when you do that. And that's what people call deinstitutionalization. The motive of the World Organization was that quite a number of mental health care users are capable of staying in community, leaving them in an institution. Some of them stay for the rest of their life. That's why Professor said it was difficult to identify even some of them, because some lose contact with their families for 20 years, not knowing where they are, or they don't even know their families. So the World Organization was saying it might be better to start issues of integration into communities. The World Organization did not do this for mental health only. They did it even for MDR-TB. For instance, we have got 9 special hospitals for MDR-TB in the country, multi-drug resistant TB, where people had to be locked in for 18 months. 18 months sitting in one center with your own room and your own toilet so that you don't infect others. The World Organization did the research and said, if you take their sputum and test it, and 3 consecutive sputa are negative, you can discharge that patient in the community. But you don't just sit in the office and discharge. You send out people. In fact, in terms of this document, it says we must form district committees. And as I'm speaking, 7 district committees in South Africa have been formed. An ideal district committee must consist of a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, an occupational therapist, and a psychiatric nurse. If any person must be referred to the community, it is those 5 people who must sit and work together to see how it's going to happen. Now, because our situation is not ideal, we have got 7 districts at the moment since we started, because we are forming them district by district. But not all of them, as you know, the shortage in South Africa will have the 5 people. But an ideal one will have that: a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, an occupational therapist, and a psychiatric nurse. That's how it needs to be done. So nobody must use the issue of deinstitutionalization, whether from our strategy or whether from the World Health Organization, for doing things that are outside what is described there, because it's written in black and white what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. I just thought it's very important to clarify that. I was also asked the last question, whether this was this a money-making scheme? It's difficult to see what money was going to be gained from here. Maybe because the professor also researched, it's just that he's trying to give you a summary. He researched this issue of saving cost or money. He did it, yes, he actually did it scientifically. Maybe I must hand it back to him to explain, because it's difficult for me to understand whether there's a money-making scheme or a corruption. But let me explain to you what he found out, because he did those calculations.
Thank you, Minister. Let me just clarify one or two things. The mental health policy and strategy is very clear about deinstitutionalization, this document that the minister was reading. It actually defines the parameters, and one of the parameters is that before you deinstitutionalize, your primary health care system and the clinics must be prepared and be ready and be resourced and be functional. Now, if you look at this project, none of that was available. So you were deinstitutionalizing into an empty space that was not ready and prepared, and in fact, even all the NGOs said that. That's one thing. So the project acted contrary or in contravention of the policy that everybody follows. Secondly, the policy is clear. To deinstitutionalize people, you are trying to provide them into an unrestricted environment. Now, in this case, we took patients from a restricted environment and put them into more restricted environment in overcrowded NGOs. Now, overcrowding cannot be unrestricted. It's more restricted. Secondly, we took patients from a structured environment where they received care, food, and water into NGOs where there was no food, there was no water, there was no warmth. Now, could that be what the policy of deinstitutionalization wants? No. We took patients from their communities. There are many patients, some of them, they reside in Soweto. They've been taken now to Kalinin. Now, you're supposed to put people back into their communities. Where do you take them from? You take them far away from their communities. Now, that's contrary to policy. So we mustn't be fooled that this was a deinstitutional. This was actually contrary to the policy if you read it. I just wanted to clear that. The second one I want to make clear is this. I know of no protector in the country that has had to deal with life and death. I know all the protectors have dealt with people who have stolen money, who are corrupt, but nobody has had to deal with death of people. And even they don't deal with death, they deal with administrative issues. Here we're dealing with 94 people that have died. So in thinking of my own recommendation, I have had to think about these families that have lost 95 people that they will never see. And ask myself, which protector actually has ever made a recommendation about death? There's none in the country. So I've had to deal with that as part of my recommendation. And I want to make the last point. In health, decisions that we make are about trying to preserve life and to promote life. This project did the opposite. It did not promote and preserve life. It was taking life away from people. That's the difference that I think we must understand and never shirk away from. The whole purpose of healthcare is to promote and preserve life, not to take life away.
Thank you very much. I'll take only... Oh, okay.
They wanted to ask about this money-making scheme. Now, let me deal with it this way. I'm sure you have seen the MEC saying that she's been paying 10,000 rands on television on patients at Life Esidimeni. That basically translates to about 320 rands per day per patient. That's what she was paying. And of course, now she wanted to pay 100 rands when she takes them to the NGOs. Now, let me ask you, South Africans, what can you do with 100 rands per day? And what service can you provide? That's just one question that you must all exercise. The second thing is, since the project and now that patients are dying, several of these NGOs have been closed by the very same people who had told us that they had seen them and inspected them. They are now closing them because they realize that they don't have infrastructure, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the skills. They have taken patients from there and put them into places like Vescopis, Tutara, and other places. Now, you were paying 320 rands a day at Life Esidimeni. You are now paying 1,960 per day at Vescopis. What money have you saved in that process? And finally, I need to address the issue of the patients. I've said that patients are still at risk in the NGOs. One of my recommendations is that they must all be moved. I'm not saying that they must be moved back to Life Esidimeni because a legal process has taken place there on the closure. I'm saying they must be moved to suitable places within the province that we know exist and will provide them with the care that they need. I think that's one of the recommendations I have made. But to argue, you can't argue on the basis of cost, that this was a cost-cutting exercise. It has become an expensive exercise in the long term. And finally, we have a constitution in the country. And you would remember when people wanted to have antiretroviral, the constitution made a ruling that the state's obligation to provide care was more important than actually the money that should be available. So you can never just justify a cost cutting constitutionally when you have, the state has got the obligation to provide basic care to patients. So I've seen that argument be made by the MEC. I don't agree with it because I think there's a constitutional precedence about it, particularly in relation to vulnerable people. At the time, it was HIV/AIDS. We now have it here. And for some of you who often read the literature, you would remember an old man called Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi says, one of the ways you judge the quality of a society is how it looks after its vulnerable. These people that were at Life Esidimeni were the most vulnerable. And if we had to really subject ourselves to that test as to how we dealt with them from Life Esidimeni into the NGOs, we would fail that test of Mahatma Gandhi. Thanks. But the exercise, was it a money-making? I think one of the witnesses did mention this, that some of the NGOs were attracted by the fact that they would be getting money. But I really was not given a mandate to see whether it was a money-making business or not. I mean, there are many things, I could have also investigated who was in love with who and so forth. That was not my business here. I needed to find out the circumstance or who won which tender. All of these things were coming through. But remember, the minister had asked me, look at the circumstances that surrounded the death of these people. So that's how I focused myself rather than be diverse. Otherwise, I wouldn't be finished and I wouldn't be talking to you here today.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much. I'll take only 2 questions from members of the media. Only members of the media. 1, 2. Then we close the question session. And then we'll hand over to Prof, the chairperson of OHC, to hand over the report to the Premier of Gauteng. I'll take those 2 questions.
My question.
Only 2 questions from those 2. Yeah.
Sikelelwa Mdingi from eNCA. 2 questions, Professor. The first one is that the MEC made some submissions on your interim report about 2 weeks ago. Can you just share with us what it is that was in the submissions? And secondly, what did you find to be the main cause of death among the deceased? Thank you.
Second question.
My name is Nziki. I represent Spotlight Magazine. I just wanted to check whether the MEC was invited to this gathering and whether or not she declined, and also the director.
Thank you.
It's very easy. I don't deal with the invitations, but I know that both were invited, so I don't know what was their response. The first question dealt with What was the first question? The MEC? What was the question on the MEC from? Oh, okay. Let me deal with the cause of death. We have had 94 deaths of mentally ill patients. It's remarkable that only one person has died from a mental health related illness. None of the 93 have died from a mental illness. They have died from other things other than mental illness, like dehydration, diarrhea, epilepsy, heart attacks, all other things except mental illness is what, there is a multitude of that is actually contained in the report. And it also makes it look very funny. You know, when you read the report, it says somebody died from natural causes or it died from a natural cause. It puts your mind at ease. When you go and investigate, you find that actually somebody went to sleep the previous night in a place that is supposed to care for them, and they're found to be dead the following day. Now, you can't say that's natural because you don't know what happened in the middle of the night when you are supposed to look after them. Or somebody really had a fit and aspirated and died from there. You don't know whether they were on the right treatment or whether they were taking treatment or not. So all these so-called natural deaths are the ones that are going to be subjected to the inquest and toxicology and so forth. So I think the causes of death are other than mental health, and I would say they are other than natural from the little investigations that we have done. In terms of the response of the MEC, I just want to say, first of all, I think they wanted to change the data, and that's why initially I had to explain how people work within the health system. Actually, they assume that because everybody would be rushed to a hospital to go and die there, that's where you are registered and you belong in the health system. That's not how it works. So they wanted us to change everybody to have died in the hospital and so forth. And that's not how the health system works. I mean, when I was in London, I would see patients from Edinburgh. They never belonged to the hospital in London, they belonged to Edinburgh. But I had to see them in London for a particular reason, because that's where they are registered, and they are bringing them for me to do something else. And that's why I spend my time to say, when the patients left Life Esidimeni, they went to three broad categories. They either went home, or they were registered into hospitals, or they were registered into an NGO. That an NGO comes and asks Dr. Makhoba as a physician to come and see a patient in their NGO. It doesn't make that patient mine. The patient remains the patient of the NGO. I think that's a very fundamental thing, and any standard practicing physician would know that the patient's point of entry, it's where they belong as they traverse the system of healthcare. Is there anything that I missed in this question? No. Okay. That's fine.
Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to the chairperson of OHSC, Professor Lizo Mazwai, just to hand over the report, the final report to the Premier of Gauteng. And then before he can do that, let me announce that, this particular report is available on our website, which is www.ohsc.org.za. And then you navigate, you'll see the publication on the main menu, and then under publication, there'll be OHC documents, and then you'll see the report there, together with the annexures. Thank you very much. Over to Prof.
Thank you. Thank you, Program Director. It is my pleasure and privilege to hand over the report to the National Minister and the Premier. But let me preface that with one or two comments. First of all, to reiterate that the Ombud is appointed and reports directly to the Minister. And in this instance, the Ombudsman was instructed by the Minister, National Minister of Health, to investigate the report we see here. The Office of Health Standards and the logistics and resources are supplied or provided to the Office of the Ombuds. In other words, the resources and logistics are located within the Office of the OHSC. I chair the board of the Office of Health Standards, and therefore it is my honor as chairperson to hand over the report officially and publicly to the National Minister of Health, Honorable Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, and also the Honorable Premier of Gauteng Province, Honorable Mr. David Makura. In this country, we have many reports and many statements made about leakages. I'm not aware of any other report except this one, which I'm officially handing over. Thank you.
Again, for the records, we should have the report displayed so we're not giving a closed envelope. Okay. Right. That's it.
Thank you very much. I would like to make an announcement that the media must just remain behind. After 15 minutes, we'll have a briefing by the Premier of Gauteng. We are requesting you that you must remain behind, especially members of the media, for another media briefing after 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Sorry, before the Honorable Premier comes to address the media, he would like to see all the family members. As soon as he's finished with the family members, he will come back and address. The OHSC staff, they will lead the family members to the executive boardroom where he will meet them.
Yeah. Executive boardroom. The family members.
The word it was going forever, that's why I gave you the note.
Yeah.
Gauteng. I accept the report and will fully and urgently implement its recommendations without any reservation or any delay. It is clear from the report that there has been both improper and gross negligent conduct on the part of officials in the Department of Health while implementing the policy related to the deinstitutionalization of mental health in our province. As a result, many of our beloved citizens have died, causing severe pain and anguish amongst the bereaved families, and the number has been put forward as 94 by the Health Ombudsman earlier today. I deeply regret the tragic loss of lives under the care of our provincial government as a result of the action taken by officials in the Department of Health to transfer patients from Life Esidimeni to NGOs that were not ready to take care of these patients. On the 6th of December 2016, I made a commitment in the Gauteng legislature in which I expressed my unhappiness with how this process of this deinstitutionalization was handled. I promised that should the investigation find that there was any improper or negligent conduct, action will be taken to hold those responsible accountable. I also met with members of the bereaved families and affected families on the 15th of December. In the same meeting with members of the families, I also made a commitment to them that should the report find that there was improper conduct, there shall be consequences and everybody responsible will be held to account. And the report makes it clear that, as the report says, there was reckless, improper, negligent, as well as precipitous action that has led us to this sad day today. It is indeed a sad day that so many of our citizens have died under the circumstances that could have been avoided. I would like to announce that last night I received a letter of resignation from Ms. Qedani Mahlangu as the MEC for Health and as a member of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. I have accepted her resignation, and I would have taken action because, in any case, this is a very serious matter. Like all members of the Gauteng Provincial Executive Council or Provincial Cabinet, she fully understood that if something goes profoundly wrong in your area of responsibility and under the area where you have executive authority, you have to take direct accountability and not pass the buck to junior officials. Accordingly, I intend to appoint the former Deputy Minister of Health and former MEC for Health in Gauteng, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, as the new MEC for Health, pending the amendment of the list of the ANC in the Gauteng legislature and her swearing in, which should take place over the next few days. Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa's depth of experience and expertise in public health will help us to overhaul mental health in our province and sustain some of the general improvements we have been making in the public health system in our province, except that this area of mental health clearly has suffered huge neglect. In the meantime, MEC for Social Development, Ms. Nandi Matula Koza, will act as the MEC for Health from today over the next few days, pending the amendment of the list and the swearing in of Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa. With regard to disciplinary action against public servants, I have instructed the Director General in the Office of the Premier, sitting here next to me, Ms. Pidi Lebaleni, to urgently institute appropriate action to deal with the recommendation of the Ombuds with regard to this matter. Ladies and gentlemen, you would know that when you deal with public servants, this is regulated by the law, and we have to do everything in accordance with the law. And some of you would know that the law requires that before you suspend an official, you have to write them a letter as the executive authority, as giving them a right of reply why you should not suspend them. So with them, as opposed to politically appointed people, there is a very clear stipulation, and that so applies to other officials below the head of department. I appoint heads of departments in the province. So among the public servants against whom disciplinary action will be taken is the head of department, who is the accounting officer, and other senior officials who are identified in the report. I want to emphasize, as I also said about the political leadership, there can be no passing of the buck to junior officials, that I am not responsible as junior officials somewhere who made this disastrous and tragic situation that led to the death of our fellow citizens. I will make further pronouncements over the next 2 days once I have followed the law, as I have explained with regard to what's going to happen with the relevant officials in the department. With regard to an urgent matter about the NGOs, the Health Ombudsman also recommends that the remaining NGOs that still have patients, we should, the Health Ombudsman says within 45 days, but we are going to act much more urgently with regard to the situation of the patients in those NGOs to ensure that they are placed in appropriate facilities where they will be taken care of. I've just discussing with family members. They have identified also the areas of urgency, which NGOs for them should require more urgent attention immediately. And we will work with members of the families as they have a committee, and they have made it clear to us that they would like to work with the Minister and I in implementing all these recommendations of the Health Ombudsman. Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa should be able to start as the MEC early next week, we're hoping, at least by Monday. And she will work with the Minister of Health and myself in following up on all the recommendations with immediate effect. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate that I deeply regret and profusely apologize to the tragic loss of lives of our fellow citizens who were patients under the care of our Provincial Department of Health. Health is indeed about saving lives, and the circumstances under which these patients died are totally unacceptable. The action we are taking to implement the recommendations of the Health Ombudsman will ensure that this situation never occur in the future. Once again, I convey my condolences to the bereaved family members, as I did during the meeting with them on the 15th of December and during the meeting with them before this media briefing. I would like to thank Professor Malekapuru Makgoba, the Health Ombudsman, for his meticulous investigation and the report which points clearly to what needs to be done in effecting remedial action. we will implement everything that is in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. We'll now take questions. We will now take questions from the media. As the Premier said, he did speak to the members of the families. So we will only take questions from the media. And there are other processes that will be underway to consult with all the people who are concerned with this matter. So I really would like to appeal that only the media would now ask questions, and we don't hope to keep you much longer now. We'll take one question at a time. I think it's better that way. So I'll ask you to identify yourself and the media organization you represent, and then you can ask your question and try to make it short. So let's start there. Yes.
Good afternoon, Premier. Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM. Did the former MEC, you've given an apology to the families and the victims, families of the victims. Did the former MEC offer an apology in a resignation letter? Do you know if she has apologized to the families or the victims, families of the victims? Thank you.
Okay. Premier, we can.
I just want to say the former MEC will release a public statement. So I think members of the media should await what she will be able to say to the people of our country and the people of our province, to the members of the affected families. So she will issue a public statement. We think now that the report is out. That's what she said to me when she sent me the letter. I don't want to speak on her behalf.
Okay, next question. Yeah. Okay, good. Sure.
Good day, Sipho Sturman from SABC TV News. I understand, Premier, that you...
We don't see you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay,
here.
sure.
I understand, Premier, you mentioned that she will be releasing a statement on the matter, but she reports to you. So did she give you any explanation on why was this matter handled the way it was? And certainly you speak to a lot of families. There's a lot of anger that she was very rude. She lacked empathy, and they couldn't just get across to her to air their frustration. Was there any explanation in terms of that behavior? Thank you.
Just wait, I think the Premier said Ms. Mahlangu has resigned, and he has accepted the resignation. Now, she doesn't report to him in that regard. The report was released today, but the Premier will make a will comment on that. Yeah, okay.
Hi.
No, wait. Premier, we can just...
I think when the minister spoke this morning, he said that he spoke of distress and anger. As the Premier of the province, there are also things that I'm following up on. Quite clearly, there are also things that the issue of hiding exactly what the information was not only to the ombuds, but it was also to me. And that's why at every given point, when we were following up to understand what is happening on this matter, the picture painted by the report by the ombuds, how many people are affected, which NGOs are ready, is the same. It's the same game that was being played, and I am clear that there will be full consequences for all that. In some instances, it's some kind of fraudulent activity. Fraudulent activity, Minister, like issuing when you know that the NGOs didn't have valid licenses, and then overnight, once you know the report, this matter has been discovered, going around issuing, collecting the ones that were not valid, issuing fraudulent, signing at the hoof, last minute licenses. All those issues, everybody who played their role, as I said to you, including those who may not be in the report, our system of government will ensure that there are full consequences. When we say there will be full consequences, officials in our province precisely know what we mean. They may run to courts, but when we say there will be full consequences, there will be full consequences. That's what I want to assure the people of South Africa. So there are many things that may not be in the report that make me angry about why was this not disclosed by the officials to us, that this had to be found out by the Health Ombudsman. And those issues will all be followed, and the processes that are in place will ensure that we act on that.
Okay.
The question about whether the MEC spoke to me, at this point, I want to emphasize that our approach to government in our province and as the Premier is that when an MEC, when something has happened in your department, I don't want an explanation that I was not involved. Mm-hmm. I don't want that excuse. It's worse if it is something that has to do with loss of life. I don't want an explanation that it is not me, it is somebody else, as I say. That I want every one of us to understand when we hold public office, when we are given the responsibility by our people to serve them, and something goes profoundly wrong, we have to face our people and take responsibility and take work from there. But if it's in a direct line of authority, for me, the key issue will be, what did you do to prevent it? And if things have happened, I really don't want to entertain a representation that may be made to somebody else that, but you know, I may have been misled too. It does not work like that. So if you are a political head, you are a political head. Something goes profoundly wrong, you must be the first to take responsibility. That's how I want to deal with that question of, I don't want to go into all the discussions I've had with the MEC. The first thing is why, I want to say to you, why did the department only know when Mr. Bloom, who is here, asked the question about mental health patients? That's the first number. And it is from there, after that question, and there's been several occasions of interacting with the department. I know the senior officials, I interacted it. What is the truth? What is the intervention? Why do we have to wait for the ombuds? Which NGOs did you say are ready and they were not ready? Which we now know, and get explanations. No, the NGOs, we have gone back, we have made sure everybody is cared for. The reports of the Ombudsman says that's not what the officials did. So there will be full consequences along the line. And I'm saying that goes beyond the number that's identified in the report. The people that I know may have said certain things in the meetings we had with the officials to get them to account. How many people have passed on? Why did they pass on? What happened with moving these patients? Why did you move them to places that are not ready? Because that's what this policy and the strategy talks about. Under what conditions do you de-institutionalize? So that's what makes me angry as well. And there will be appropriate action.
Okay.
Anger must not lead us to act outside the law, because people will win cases when in fact they did wrong things. It's my experience about disciplining people in the public service. People can win cases if you don't act properly.
Okay, yeah. There's somebody with the mic there. We'll come to you.
Okay. Hi, it's Catherine from the Times. I just want to know, the MEC has resigned, but she was found responsible for this and 94 people died. Is anyone going to charge her criminally with negligence or leading to the deaths of these people?
Okay.
The Ombuds dealt with that matter, actually. There's set of clear recommendations about processes relating to criminal matters of criminal, charging people criminally. It's very clear in the Ombuds report.
Okay, next question.
I'm Pat Sidley from the British Medical Journal. Primarily, I'm asking a question of you, which is chucking back at you the idea that everybody will be held accountable. So the question to you, Premier, is were you not yourself accountable in this matter? And do you intend resigning?
Okay, that's fine, Premier.
Well, I think, Pat, thank you very much. I've heard from you a long time ago. I'm glad that you are back reporting, but you are focusing on health issues. I am very clear, those of you who know me, if things had to do directly with me, I wouldn't even wait to be told to resign. That's if things had to do directly with me, if I was directly responsible, you wouldn't wait to hear about that. I would have resigned long before the report was completed, if this had to do directly with me. My responsibility is to make sure we hold everybody accountable in the system of government. We've been doing that. And our MECs know that if something goes wrong, and I want to emphasize profoundly wrong in your line of action, you will be held to account. I am accountable to the people of South Africa through the province, those who are in this province, and that's why working with the families, we have agreed that we will implement the report. Pat, the report is very, very clear about who must be held accountable. Let's stick to what the report says. If it said I didn't do what I was supposed to do as the Premier, I would have started with myself. The report is very, very clear.
Okay. All right, yeah. Where's the mic? Can we have the mic here, please? Sure.
Good day, everyone. My name is Johnny Sai. I'm with African News Agency. Just want to ask the Premier, please. You are interacting already with the families and they are very angry. But if some of them come so far with any demands for anything, compensation, closure, if there have been any demands made by the families or their representatives to Gauteng government or to the government of SA, anything? Thank you so much.
Okay. I think the families have appealed that we must deal with the loss of their loved ones with dignity. I would like us to appeal to that, because once they start putting demands, it sounds like they have appealed to me when I met them on the 15th of December, and then they said it today that we will have a process, myself and the minister, to work with them to find closure. Whatever finding closure for them will entail, we are committed to work with them. And they are very committed. They said it to me just now, and the minister, we are very committed to work with you to find healing and closure. And their commitment must not be misunderstood as they want this or they don't want that. So the issues, that they will put them to us. They want us to work with them in a dignified way to ensure in the end there's closure. We mustn't put things they have not put on the table, but we will hear them, Johnny. We have agreed with the minister that we will have a meeting with the families as soon as we have both their representative and us have put together a team. That meeting must be preceded by processing of issues. That meeting will take place as soon as possible. Once there's agreement, they'll put the issues they want us to attend to. They said to me there are most urgent issues. And some of the most urgent issues is they appeal to me that it will be important that whoever you bring to take charge of the Department of Health must be someone who's qualified in health. And I reassured them, yes, I will make sure that I bring someone qualified in the area of health. They said to me, the remaining 4 NGOs where there are people must be a matter of urgency, that we should work with them to ensure that that's attended to. They also raised the issue of autopsies. That's a matter we will work with them on. The rest of the issues, they said they will work with us in line with what the recommendations are saying. It's too early to tell.
Okay, yeah. Just get the mic.
Mareike from Jack Rand FM. My question was partially asked there, but as you know, I mean, all of us, this is live, people are viewing this live, we're seeing the reactions as people are watching this. What promise and commitment can you give to people that still have family members in some of these institutions, in other institutions that the province oversees, and people in general that might seriously doubt the credibility and the power of our Department of Health in this country? Everyone is looking at you, sir. What's your response?
Okay. It's fine. I think we can. All right. The minister would like to comment.
You should wait. You can just move a little bit.
Well, I thought I made a lengthy statement in the press conference of the Ombudsperson. This is the Premier's press conference. I was just coming to observe, but he has asked me to respond to this question. I said we did an audit in 2010 by 5 different organizations about the issues of standards, including safety and security of patients, infection control, attitude of staff, after which we realized there's a gap. And that's why we launched the Office of Health Standard Compliance. And then as we are launching the office, we realized that there's another gap. Professionals are reported to Nursing Council or Health Professions Council or South African Pharmacy Council, but what about the system and the institution? And we said, let's have an office of the Health Ombudsman, which I said is a public protector of health. I'm sure you'll agree with me. It's for the first time in the history of the country that something like this has happened. We established that office to protect the integrity of health, to protect users of healthcare system. If you think the Ombudsman did not do that today, then you may say so. We leave in the judgment to you. Has he not lived to expectations, as I said? Even in Parliament, there was a debate. Do you really need this office? What's going to be the role of the Health Professions Council? What will the Nursing Council do? I kept on saying we need a public protector of health to protect the public. And I believe from now onwards, a lot of people will know that there is such an office. And if something happened, there are repercussions. There are reports. It's not just a talk show. This morning, I was asked on Morning Life whether we're really going to implement the recommendation. And I said, when I appointed that office, it was not a public relations exercise. It was a real thing. And that's how we're going to look at the healthcare system in the country. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I just want to emphasize that we will implement every recommendation where I, as the Premier, has authority. That's the guarantee I would like to give.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Oh, last one.
Sipho Sterman from SABC TV News again. Just one last question. What lessons are you taking from this whole episode? Especially when it regards, my colleague mentioned there that, the Gauteng Health Department has been tainted by this, because especially the families were going on about issues of lack of care. And that seems to have been an issue that if maybe this was attended to earlier with just one family inquiring about their family member, then maybe deaths would have been prevented. So just what are you taking out of this, and what are you ensuring that your health department takes individual cases seriously? Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we're basically taking everything out of this report. Even outside the area of mental health, where there are issues that patients and families go to our facilities to go and report. This report and this process is going to lead to a major relook even in areas where sometimes issues don't reach directly even to me as the Premier. They take pretty long to get to where there must be political accountability. So we will overhaul, not just in mental health, and Minister, we will work together. The process that has already started of issuing annual reports that show the performance of the different institutions of our public health in whether they meet the national core standards, and the complaints system, the system of complaints we're going to overhaul. And I'm saying beyond the mental health issue that we are dealing with. So there's a lot of work to do.
Okay, that was the last, but I saw a hand here. Are you, all right, yeah, let's allow you to be the last.
Zintle Mapumulo from the City Press. This question goes both to the Minister and the Premier. Under the leadership of MEC Qedani Mahlangu, we've seen a lot of bungles from the security company tenders to the healthcare workers. Why was she kept so long in this position?
Let's deal with what we came here for. The report.
That question is not mine. I don't know why you say Minister. You know very well it's not mine. It belongs to the Premier. I don't hire MECs and I don't fire them. I wish I could be given such a power. I'm appealing to the Constitution to give me such a
Okay. Yeah, but as I said, the report, we dealt with things that are in the report. I don't think it would be fair to then list all sorts of other allegations which have not been tested. But the Premier can comment if he wishes to.
Yes, I am dealing with what has been the findings of a very important office in our country, the Health Ombudsman. We are the first province, Minister, that this report deals with the health system in our province. As I said, we take everything that the Professor Makhuba has raised. We will follow up on all these issues. The issues that he has raised, there's evidence there. He's not making allegations. And that's why I said at the very beginning to you, I will implement all these recommendations without delay and without reservation, because there's evidence he has provided. Any other thing outside evidence, I don't want to entertain. I want to deal with the evidence that has been provided here so that we find closure and healing for the families.
Okay. This brings us to the end, and as we said, we will keep you updated of any new developments as we implement the recommendations of the Health Ombudsman on the report. Thank you very much for your attention. Until we speak again.